The marble halls of the Galactic Council echoed with alien voices that grew louder by the hour. Ambassador David Reed sat quietly in the corner of the negotiation chamber, watching two of the galaxy's most powerful empires argue like children, fighting over toys. His simple gray suit looked plain next to the golden armor of the Altran delegates and the shimmering biosuits of the Corvin representatives. The Altrans were tall, muscular beings with red skin and 4 arms. They loved war more than anything else in the universe. For them, fighting was not just what they did, but who they were. Their leader, General Thax, slammed his fist on the crystal table hard enough to crack it. "The Corvin scum will pay for every drop of Altran blood spilled in the Nexus sector," he roared. Across the table, the Corvins buzzed in their strange harmonic language before their translator spoke. The Corvins looked like giant insects with silver carapaces and multiple eyes. They shared thoughts through biological networks that connected every member of their species. "The Hive remembers every Corvin life lost to Altran savagery. We demand compensation for 3 destroyed colonies," their speaker clicked. David sipped his coffee and watched the show. This was the 47th session in 3 months. The two empires had been fighting for over a century, turning dozens of star systems into graveyards. The Galactic Council had tried everything to make them stop. Trade sanctions did not work. Economic pressure failed. Military intervention by other species only made things worse. "Perhaps we should consider the human proposal," suggested Ambassador Quilox from the neutral Telian Confederacy. The Telians were small, blue creatures known for their patience and wisdom. General Thax laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "The humans? These soft creatures who have never won a single battle? What could they possibly offer?" He gestured toward David with contempt. "Look at him. No weapons, no armor, no scars. His species spreads across the galaxy like a disease, always talking about peace and cooperation." The Corvin speaker's mandibles clicked in what David had learned was their version of laughter. "The Hive agrees with the Altran fool for once. Humans fear war. They are merchants and farmers, not warriors. Their colonies have no defenses. Their fleets carry cargo, not weapons. What wisdom could such cowards offer to real warriors?" David stood up slowly, setting his coffee cup on the side table. Every alien in the room turned to look at him. Some showed curiosity. Others displayed open contempt. He had gotten used to both reactions over his years as Earth's chief negotiator. "You're right about one thing," David said in his calm, measured voice. "Humans do fear war." He walked to the center of the chamber, his footsteps the only sound in the suddenly quiet room. "We fear it because we understand what it really costs," General Thax snorted. "Pretty words from a species that runs from every fight. You humans have been in space for 200 years and have never conquered a single world, even the weakest. Predators in the galaxy have more backbone than your kind." "The Hive has analyzed human expansion patterns," the Corvin speaker added. "Always peaceful, always slow, always asking permission before settling new worlds. No species in Galactic history has shown such consistent weakness." David nodded thoughtfully. "You've done your homework, but let me share some facts with you." He pulled out a small device that looked like nothing more than a communication pad. "In the past century of your war, how many star systems have you 2 conquered from each other? 17 systems changed hands," General Thax said proudly. "Altran warriors proved their superiority in each battle. The Hive corrects this false claim," the Corvin buzzed. 14 systems fell to Corvin tactical superiority. Only 3 remain under Altran control. "So, in 100 years of constant warfare, you fought over 21 star systems," David said. "Meanwhile, in the same time period, humanity has peacefully established colonies in over 300 systems. We've built trading relationships with 47 different species. Our exploration fleets have mapped new hyperspace routes that cut travel times across the galaxy by 30%. He smiled, but there was something cold about it that made several aliens step back. You see, while you two have been playing war games over scraps of territory, humanity has been building something much more valuable. Infrastructure, relationships, networks of cooperation that span from the galactic core to the outer rim, merchant. Nonsense! General Thax spat. Trade routes mean nothing when faced with superior firepower. The Altran Empire could sweep through human space like a storm through wheat fields, the Corvan speaker agreed. The Hive calculates that human colonies would fall within days. No defenses, no military tradition, no warrior spirit. They would surrender before the first shot was fired. David's smile grew wider. You know what? You might be right. Maybe it's time someone taught humanity what real warfare looks like. He held up the small device in his hand. In fact, I think both of your empires would make excellent teachers. What are you saying, human? General Thax leaned forward, his forearms tensing as if ready for a fight. I'm saying that your threats have convinced me. Earth's High Command has authorized me to end these negotiations if no peaceful solution can be reached. David's thumb hovered over a single button on the device. You want to prove that might makes right? That warriors are superior to merchants? That fear is better than cooperation? The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the translation systems. Then prove it, David said quietly, pressing the button. The device chirped once, a sound so soft it was almost lost in the vast chamber. But David knew that small sound had just traveled across quantum communication networks to every human world in the galaxy. From the core worlds to the frontier colonies, from the trading stations to the research outposts, the message was the same. One word. Activate. David tucked the device back into his pocket and looked around the room at the confused faces staring at him. Gentlemen, ladies, beings of various classifications, he said politely, you have 36 hours to reconsider your positions. I suggest you use that time wisely. General Thax stood up, all four arms spread wide in a threatening display. Are you declaring war on the Altran Empire, little human? War? David shook his head. Oh no, General, we still fear war. What I'm declaring is much simpler. He walked toward the chamber door, pausing only to look back over his shoulder. I'm declaring an end to your illusions about what humanity really is. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving the most powerful warriors in the galaxy staring at each other in confusion. None of them understood what had just happened. They would learn soon enough. The message reached Admiral Beth Torres exactly 17 minutes after David pressed the button. She was in her quarters aboard the exploration vessel Peaceful Dawn, reviewing what appeared to be mineral surveys from the outer colonies. The quantum communicator on her desk gave a soft chime, displaying a single word that made her smile for the first time in months. Finally, she whispered, then pressed her own communication button. All department heads to the bridge. Operation Sunrise is now active. Repeat, Operation Sunrise is active. Throughout human space, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. Commander Tom Bradley was inspecting the hydroponic farms on Orbital Station Harvest Moon when his wrist communicator buzzed. He looked at the message, then at the dozen alien visitors touring the agricultural facility. The delegation from the Vrex Consortium had been studying human farming methods for weeks, taking detailed notes on crop yields and growing techniques. Ladies, gentlemen, beings, Tom announced cheerfully. I'm afraid we'll need to cut today's tour short. Emergency maintenance protocols, you understand? He gestured toward the exit. Transport shuttles are already prepared to return you to your ships. The Vrex ambassador, a tall creature with purple skin and too many joints, clicked his translator in confusion. But we have not finished documenting your food production capabilities. The consortium wishes to adopt similar methods. Tom's smile never wavered as he guided the aliens toward the airlocks. Of course. Please contact our diplomatic corps to schedule another visit. I'm sure they'll be happy to arrange something suitable. He sealed the airlock behind the confused delegation and watched their shuttle depart. Then he walked to what looked like a maintenance panel and placed his palm on a hidden scanner. The orbital station began to transform. Harvest Moon's outer ring, which had appeared to be nothing but agricultural modules, split open to reveal particle beam arrays powerful enough to crack asteroids. The central hub expanded as hidden armor plating emerged from concealed bays. What had been a peaceful farming station now bristled with enough firepower to level a small moon. Similar transformations occurred throughout human space. On the trading hub, New Singapore, Merchant Captain Lisa Park activated protocols that converted her cargo fleet into a military armada. The freight containers her ships had been carrying split open to reveal advanced fighter craft and military supplies. The civilian crews who had been loading and unloading those containers for months suddenly moved with the precision of trained soldiers. Navigation, plot courses to defensive positions, Alpha through Gamma, Lisa ordered as her bridge. Crew shed their merchant uniforms to reveal military fatigues underneath. Communications. Begin Phase 2 broadcasts, and someone please inform the Corvin Trade Delegation in Docking Bay 7 that their shore leave has been canceled. The Corvin traders had been studying human commercial practices for 6 months, learning how humans managed to transport goods so efficiently across vast distances. They had no idea that every merchant route they had mapped was actually a carefully planned military supply line. In the research station orbiting Kepler 438b, Dr. Mike Chang received the activation signal while showing a group of Altran scientists through his xenobiology laboratory. The Altrans had been impressed by human scientific methods and had requested to observe their research techniques firsthand. I apologize, but we've just detected a contamination breach in Sector 7, Mike announced, his voice carrying just the right note of scientific concern. All non-essential personnel must evacuate immediately. Standard quarantine procedures. The Altran scientists grumbled, but allowed themselves to be escorted to emergency shuttles. They had no way of knowing that Sector 7 was code, or that the quarantine protocols were designed to clear the station of alien observers. As soon as the shuttles cleared minimum safe distance, Dr. Chang activated the station's true purpose. The research facility's outer shell began to retract, revealing a massive sensor array that could track ship movements across 3 star systems. The laboratory modules reconfigured themselves into quantum communication hubs capable of coordinating military operations across thousands of light years. What the Altrans had studied as a simple science station was actually one of humanity's most sophisticated intelligence-gathering platforms. Admiral Torres watched her tactical display as reports flooded in from across human space. Every civilian installation was revealing its military nature. Every merchant vessel was dropping its disguise. Every research project was showing its true strategic value. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving confirmation signals from all sectors. The network is fully active." Beth nodded, studying the holographic display that showed the real scope of human military presence. What the galaxy saw as scattered colonies and peaceful trading posts was actually the most extensive defense network ever constructed. Each human world was positioned to support its neighbors. Every trade route could rapidly transport military supplies. Each diplomatic mission had been gathering intelligence on alien capabilities and weaknesses. "Signal strength on all channels?" she asked. 100%, Admiral. Every human world is reporting ready status. The deception protocols have been perfect. No alien observer suspected the true nature of our operations. Beth allowed herself a moment of pride. Humanity had spent 2 centuries carefully building this network, while making it look like nothing more than peaceful expansion. Every diplomatic mission, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange had served dual purposes. They had learned alien languages, studied alien psychology, mapped alien territory, and identified alien weaknesses, all while presenting themselves as harmless merchants and scientists. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Robert Stone, looked up from his station with barely concealed excitement. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting Altran and Corvin fleet movements. Both empires are mobilizing for what appears to be a joint assault on human space." "Let them come," Beth said quietly. "How many ships do they think we have?" Based on their intelligence gathering over the past decades, they believe humanity possesses approximately 200 combat-capable vessels, mostly converted civilian craft with minimal weaponry. Beth smiled at the display showing the true human fleet strength. Over 3,000 dedicated warships, each one disguised as something else until this moment. Orbital platforms masquerading as space stations, fighter squadrons hidden in asteroid mining facilities, weapons platforms, disguised as communication satellites. "And how many ships do they think they need to defeat us?" she asked. "Intelligence suggests the Altrans are committing 800 vessels to the operation. The Corvins are contributing 600. They apparently view this as a training exercise before returning to their main conflict." The irony was perfect. Two empires that had fought each other to exhaustion over 21 star systems now planned to use humanity as practice before resuming their real war. They had no idea they were about to face an opponent that had been preparing for this exact moment for 200 years. "Ma'am," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth High Command." "Put it through." President Maria Santos appeared on the main screen, though she was wearing a military uniform instead of her usual civilian clothes. "Admiral Torres, the Global Defense Council has authorized full activation of Operation Sunrise. Rules of engagement are now in effect. Show them what happens when someone threatens humanity." "Understood, Madam President," Beth replied. "Or should I say, Madam General?" Maria smiled grimly. "The civilian government was always just for show, Admiral, just like everything else. Begin Phase 3 when ready." The transmission ended, leaving Beth staring at her tactical display. 1,400 alien warships were moving toward human space, confident they were about to crush a weak and defenseless species. They had no idea they were walking into the most carefully prepared trap in galactic history. "All stations," she announced to her crew, "begin broadcasting on all frequencies. Let every species in the galaxy hear this." She stood up, her voice carrying across the bridge and beyond. "This is Admiral Beth Torres of the Human Defense Fleet. For 2 centuries, humanity has worked for peace. We have built, we have traded, we have explored, and we have learned. But we have also prepared." She paused, looking at the display showing thousands of human vessels decloaking across dozens of star systems. "To the Altran Empire and the Corvin Republic. You wanted to see what humans do when threatened. You wanted to test your strength against what you believed was weakness. Your request is granted. Welcome to the reality you should have feared all along." General Alex Morgan stood in the command center deep beneath the surface of Mars, watching holographic displays that showed the positions of enemy fleets across 17 different star systems. He had been waiting for this moment for 30 years, ever since he first put on a human military uniform and swore to defend his species from those who would harm them. The Altran fleet was exactly where human intelligence said it would be. General Thax was leading his forces in the traditional Altran battle formation, a massive wedge designed to smash through enemy lines with brute force. It was the same formation the Altrans had used for centuries, the same tactics they had employed against the Corvins in hundreds of previous battles. "Sir," Colonel Emma Davis reported from her station, "Altran forces are entering the Vega system. They're maintaining their standard formation and appear to be scanning for our defensive positions." Alex smiled. The Altrans were looking for the kind of defenses they understood. Massive space stations, fixed gun emplacements, and defensive fleets arranged in neat battle lines. They would find none of those things because humans did not fight the way aliens expected. "Activate the shadows," Alex ordered. Throughout the Vega system, objects that had appeared to be nothing more than space debris began to move. Asteroids revealed hidden engines and weapon systems. Derelict ships that had been floating dead in space for decades suddenly came to life. Communication satellites repositioned themselves to optimal firing angles. The Altran fleet found itself surrounded by enemies that had been invisible moments before. "Fire," Alex said quietly. The first wave of human attacks came from every direction at once. Missile swarms launched from hidden platforms in the asteroid belt. Energy beams fired from what the Altrans had thought were navigation buoys. Fighter craft that had been concealed inside fake merchant vessels poured out to attack the enemy flanks. But the most devastating attacks came from weapons the Altrans had never seen before. Human engineers had spent decades studying alien technology, learning how their shields worked, how their armor was constructed, how their ships operated. Every weakness had been cataloged and exploited. The Altran wedge formation, designed to concentrate firepower on a single point, became a liability when attacked from multiple angles. Their heavy armor, built to withstand the plasma weapons other species used, proved useless against human kinetic weapons that struck with the force of small meteors. Their communication systems, evolved for simple battle coordination, could not adapt to the complex, multi-layered assault they now faced. In the Centauri system, Captain Nina Walsh was conducting her own kind of warfare. She sat in a room filled with screens and communication equipment, leading what the military called a soft attack against the Corvan Republic. "Status report on the information campaign," she requested from her team of specialists. "Phase 1. Complete, Captain," reported her communications officer, Sergeant Paul Kim. "We've successfully infiltrated their primary communication networks. The Corvans are now receiving false tactical data about our fleet positions and strength." Nina nodded. The Corvans prided themselves on their ability to share information instantly across their entire species through biological communication networks. What they did not know was that humans had been studying those networks for decades, learning how to feed false information into their collective consciousness. "Begin Phase 2, Nina ordered. "Operation Confusion is now active. Across Corvan space, their military commanders began receiving conflicting orders. Their fleet coordination, normally perfect due to their hive-mind connection, started to break down as human cyber warfare specialists fed carefully crafted lies into their communication systems. Corvan ships that should have been supporting each other instead flew to empty coordinates. Reinforcements were sent to defend systems that were not under attack, while real battle zones were left without support. Meanwhile, Captain Roy Wilson was leading a different kind of operation entirely. His ship, the Merchant Prince, had been trading with the Corvans for 5 years. They trusted him completely, which made his current mission both easier and more effective. "Docking complete," his pilot reported as they connected to the Corvan. "Supply station Deep Harvest. All systems show normal. The Corvans have cleared us for standard cargo exchange." Roy smiled grimly. His crew had played their roles perfectly for years, building relationships with Corvan traders and military personnel. They had learned the locations of supply depots, the schedules of patrol fleets, and the security codes for military installations. Now, it was time to use that knowledge. "Begin the harvest," Roy ordered. His merchant crew, all of whom were actually special operations soldiers, moved through the Corvan station with practiced efficiency. They planted explosives in critical systems, downloaded classified military information, and sabotaged key supply shipments. By the time they departed, the station would be unable to support Corvan operations for months. Similar operations were taking place throughout both enemy empires. Human merchants, who had been trusted trading partners for years, suddenly revealed themselves as saboteurs. Human scientists, who had been studying alien culture, began using their knowledge to create targeted biological weapons. Human diplomats, who had spent decades building relationships, activated networks of agents that had been growing slowly and carefully throughout alien society. Back on Mars, General Alex watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. Both enemy empires were discovering that fighting humans was nothing like fighting each other. The Altrans could not use their berserker rage against enemies who struck from the shadows and vanished before retaliation was possible. The Corvins could not coordinate their hive mind tactics when their communications were filled with false information and conflicting orders. "Sir," Colonel Davis reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 12 Altran vessels in the Vega system. They're requesting permission to withdraw." "Granted," Alex replied, "but only after they jettison all weapons and submit to boarding by our prize crews." The captured Altran warriors were shocked to discover that their human captors knew more about Altran military doctrine than many Altran officers did. Every tactic, every formation, every traditional battle strategy had been studied and countered. The humans who questioned them spoke perfect Altran and understood their culture better than some Altrans understood it themselves. Commander Korth, the highest-ranking captured Altran, stared at the human interrogation officer in disbelief. "How? Do you know our battle songs? How do you understand our warrior codes? We have never shared these things with outsiders." The human officer, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, smiled politely. "Your people have been very welcoming over the years. Every cultural exchange, every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation taught us something new about how you think and fight. But you are merchants and farmers," Korth protested. "You have no warrior tradition. You fear combat." Sarah nodded. "We do fear combat. That's why we prepare so thoroughly for it. Fear makes you careful. Careful people study their enemies, and people who study their enemies for 2 centuries learn how to defeat them." In the Corvin sectors, similar discoveries were being made. Captured Corvin officers found themselves facing humans who understood their hive mind psychology better than they understood it themselves. The humans had studied not just Corvin technology and tactics, but Corvin biology, sociology, and even their philosophical approaches to warfare. "Your hive mind is your greatest strength," Captain Nina Walsh explained to a group of captured Corvin commanders. "But it's also your greatest weakness. When everyone thinks alike, no one thinks about what happens when those thoughts are wrong. The I." Corvin officers buzzed in confusion. Their entire society was built on the idea that collective thinking was superior to individual thought. The concept that their strength could be turned against them was incomprehensible. "We will adapt," their senior officer clicked. "The hive learns from all experiences." Nina shook her head. "You'll try to adapt, but adaptation takes time, and we've had 2 centuries to study how you adapt. We know your patterns, we know your limitations. Most importantly, we know that you can't change fast enough to match an enemy who has been preparing for this specific conflict longer than your current government has existed." As reports flowed in from across the battle zones, a clear picture emerged. Both alien empires had underestimated not just human military capability, but human strategic thinking itself. They had assumed that a species without a warrior culture could not understand war. They were learning that the opposite was true. Humans understood war so well that they had found ways to avoid it for 2 centuries while building the capability to end any conflict quickly and decisively when avoidance was no longer possible. They had not feared war because they were weak. They had feared it because they knew exactly how devastating they could be when they chose to fight. General Alex Morgan looked at the status displays showing both enemy fleets in full retreat. The first phase of human operations was complete. Both the Altran Empire and Corvin Republic were discovering that they had picked a fight with the wrong species. "Signal all commanders," he ordered. "Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2. It's time to teach the galaxy what human warfare really looks like. Dr. Lisa Chang walked through the medical research facility on Titan Station, checking on projects that the galaxy had believed were dedicated to healing and helping alien species. The Corvin medical delegation that had been studying human biotechnology for the past year had been evacuated just hours ago, completely unaware of what they had actually been observing. Status report on the targeted applications, Lisa requested. From her chief researcher, Dr. Ben Adams. All biological agents are ready for deployment, Doctor, Ben replied, reviewing data on his tablet. The Corvin respiratory modifications should render their combat effectiveness reduced by 70% within 6 hours of exposure. The Altran neural disruptors will cause severe disorientation without permanent damage. Lisa nodded with satisfaction. For decades, human medical researchers had been studying alien biology under the guise of developing better health care for the galaxy's diverse species. Every blood sample taken for routine health screenings, every genetic analysis performed for medical research, every biological study conducted for scientific advancement had served a dual purpose. Humanity now possessed the most complete database of alien physiological weaknesses in galactic history. Begin atmospheric deployment in the contested systems, Lisa ordered. Remember, we want to disable, not destroy. These beings will be much more useful as allies than as corpses. Meanwhile, Colonel Ryan Bell stood on the observation deck of the engineering ship Builder's Dream, watching his crews work on what appeared to be a routine terraforming operation on the dead world of Kythera Prime. The planet had been a battleground between the Altrans and Corvins for 50 years, leaving it a barren wasteland that both empires had finally abandoned. Sir, his engineering chief, Commander Janet Foster, reported, the atmospheric processors are running at full capacity. Estimated time to complete environmental modification, 72 hours. Ryan smiled grimly. The Altrans and Corvins thought Kythera Prime was worthless, a dead rock not worth fighting over anymore. They had no idea that human terraforming technology could be adjusted to create environments specifically hostile to certain biological types while remaining perfectly habitable for others. Excellent work, Commander. Make sure the Altran fleet, units that retreated to the Kythera system, understand what's happening. I want them to see exactly how quickly we can make their impregnable fallback position uninhabitable for their species. The retreating Altran forces had chosen Kythera Prime as a regrouping point, precisely because they thought it was too hostile for any species to use as a base. They were learning that human engineering capabilities extended far beyond simple construction and mining operations. In the Altron home system, something even more dramatic was unfolding. The fortress world of Altros Major, considered the most heavily defended planet in their empire, was experiencing what its defenders could only describe as impossible attacks. General Thax stood in his command bunker, staring at tactical displays. That made no sense. "How are they getting past our shields?" he demanded from his staff officers. "Unknown, sir," replied his tactical coordinator, a four-armed warrior named Grex. "Their weapons appear to be materializing inside our defensive perimeter. Our sensors detect no incoming fire, no missiles, no energy beams. The explosions are simply happening." What the Altrans could not comprehend was that human weapons technology had progressed far beyond anything they had imagined. Phase shift, artillery that could fire through solid matter, quantum torpedoes that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, gravity bombs that used the planet's own mass as a weapon against surface installations. Thax watched another of his impregnable fortresses simply collapse in on itself as human gravitational weapons turned its own foundations against it. "These humans fight like demons," he muttered. "Sir," Grex reported nervously, "we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Human forces are somehow attacking installations that should be impossible to reach. Our deepest bunkers, our most protected supply depots, our most secure communication centers. All of them are being destroyed by weapons we cannot detect until after they strike." The Altran Empire was discovering that 2 centuries of human peaceful exploration had included detailed mapping of every defensive installation, every military base, and every strategic resource in their territory. Human merchant vessels had carried sophisticated scanning equipment disguised as cargo containers. Human diplomats had used their access to military facilities to plant monitoring devices. Human scientists had analyzed Altran defensive technology and designed specific counters for every system. In Corvan space, a different kind of catastrophe was unfolding. The Corvan hive mind, their greatest strength and the foundation of their civilization, was beginning to break down under sustained human cyber warfare attacks. Prime drone Zexhai tried to maintain connection with the collective consciousness that bound all Corvans together, but the neural links were failing one by one. "The network is fragmenting," she reported to the Emergency Council. "We are losing contact with 17 colony worlds and 43 military installations." Subdrone Veltar clicked in distress. "The humans have introduced viral agents into our biocommunication networks. Our thoughts are being scattered. Our coordination is failing. We are becoming individuals." For a species that had never known individual consciousness, the experience was terrifying. Corvans who had always shared thoughts and emotions with their entire race were suddenly alone in their own minds. Military units that had always moved with perfect coordination now stumbled over each other as their commanders struggled to give orders through primitive voice communication. The Human Cyber Warfare Division had spent decades studying Corvan neurobiology, learning how their collective consciousness operated. They had discovered that the same biological networks that made the Corvans so efficient also made them incredibly vulnerable to specially designed interference patterns. Captain Nina Walsh monitored the psychological warfare operations from her command center, watching as Corvan society began to fragment. "Status on the individuation protocols," she requested. "Highly effective, Captain," her communications specialist reported. "Corvan military effectiveness has dropped by 85%. Their civilian population is experiencing mass psychological distress as they lose connection to the hive mind. However, we're also seeing some unexpected developments, such as some individual Corvans appear to be adapting to independent thought faster than our models predicted. They're beginning to form small, autonomous groups, rather than waiting for the collective to be restored." Nina nodded thoughtfully. Human psychological research had suggested this might happen. Corvans forced to think as individuals might actually become more creative and adaptable than they had ever been as part of the hive mind. Back on Mars, General Alex Morgan reviewed reports from across both enemy empires. The second phase of human operations was exceeding all expectations. Not only were both alien civilizations militarily defeated, but their entire understanding of warfare had been proven inadequate. "Sir," Colonel Davis reported, "we're receiving surrender communications from both the Altran High Command and the Corvan Central Hive. They're requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations." Alex studied the tactical displays showing human forces, now in control of key positions throughout both empires. Not through conquest, but through the systematic dismantling of enemy capabilities using methods neither species had been able to comprehend, much less counter. "Patch me through to Admiral Torres," he ordered. "It's time to move to Phase 3. Admiral Beth Torres appeared on the communication screen, still aboard the Peaceful Dawn, which had revealed itself to be one of the most advanced command ships ever built. "General, I assume you're ready to proceed with the integration protocols?" "Affirmative. Admiral, both enemy empires are requesting negotiations. Their military capabilities have been neutralized with minimal casualties on all sides. It's time to show them what humanity offers to those who choose cooperation over conquest." Beth smiled. "I'll contact President Santos, or should I say, Supreme. Commander Santos, I think it's time the galaxy met the real leader of humanity." As the communication ended, Alex reflected on what had been accomplished. Two of the galaxy's most powerful military empires had been defeated not through brute force, but through superior preparation, better intelligence, and more sophisticated understanding of warfare itself. The Altrans had believed that strength came from individual warrior prowess and aggressive tactics. The Corvins had trusted in collective intelligence and coordinated strategies. Both had been wrong. Humanity had proven that true strength came from patience, preparation, and the wisdom to avoid conflicts until they became necessary. When that moment arrived, humans fought not with rage or blind coordination, but with cold calculation and overwhelming superiority in every aspect of warfare. The galaxy was about to learn that the species they had dismissed as peaceful merchants and farmers had actually been the most dangerous predators of all. They had simply been predators smart enough to disguise themselves as prey until the moment came to reveal their true nature. The age of Altran and Corvin dominance was over. The age of human leadership was about to begin. President Maria Santos stood before the assembled representatives of 47 different species in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council. But she was no longer wearing the simple civilian clothes that had marked her as just another peaceful human leader. The uniform she now wore bore the insignia of Supreme Commander of the Human Protectorate, and every being in the chamber understood what that title meant. The war was over. The Altran Empire and Corvin Republic had both surrendered after their military forces were systematically dismantled by an enemy they had never truly understood. Now it was time for the galaxy to learn what humanity actually intended to do with the power they had so carefully hidden for 2 centuries. "Honored delegates," Maria began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics, "we gather today not to celebrate conquest, but to establish a new foundation for galactic civilization." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Representatives from dozens of species watched the human leader with mixtures of fear, respect, and curiosity. They had all witnessed what humanity was capable of when threatened. Now they waited to learn what humanity intended to do with their demonstrated superiority. Ambassador David Reed, the same diplomat who had triggered this entire conflict with the press of a single button, sat quietly in the human delegation section. He watched the faces around the chamber, reading the emotions and calculations behind alien expressions he had studied for years. "The Altran Empire and Corvin Republic made a fundamental error," Maria continued. "They believed that strength and weakness were simple concepts. They thought that a species that avoided conflict was automatically inferior to those who sought it. They confused restraint with inability, patience with cowardice. General Thax, now wearing the simple gray uniform of a defeated enemy rather than his golden battle armor, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Beside him, the former Corvin Prime drone Zexhai buzzed softly in what humans had learned was their expression of deep unease. "Both empires demanded to see what humans would do when threatened," Maria said, looking directly at the defeated leaders. "You saw. You experienced the result of 2 centuries of careful preparation, detailed planning, and patient intelligence gathering. But what you witnessed was not the true strength of humanity." The chamber stirred as delegates leaned forward, straining to understand what the human leader meant. "Our true strength," Maria explained, "lies not in our ability to destroy, but in our capacity to build. Not in our skill at war, but in our commitment to preventing the conditions that make war necessary." She gestured to a holographic display that appeared above the chamber, showing star maps of human space. "For 200 years, humanity has been expanding across the galaxy. Every world we settled, every trade route we established, every alliance we formed served multiple purposes. Yes, we were building a military network capable of defending our species, but more importantly, we were creating the infrastructure for a better kind of civilization." The display zoomed in to show individual star systems, revealing the true scope of human achievement. Worlds that had been barren rocks now bloomed with life. Species that had been isolated from galactic civilization now thrived as part of the human trade network. Technologies that had been jealously guarded by their creators were now shared freely to benefit all. Dr. Mike Chang, former head of the research station that had revealed itself to be a military intelligence hub, stood to address the assembly. The Altran Empire controlled 47 star systems through military conquest. The Corvan Republic dominated 39 worlds through hive mind expansion. In the same time period, humanity peacefully integrated over 300 systems into our network, improving the quality of life for every species involved. He activated another display showing economic and social data. Worlds within the human sphere of influence show increased life expectancy, improved education, better resource distribution, and dramatically reduced conflict compared to regions controlled by traditional galactic powers. General Thax could remain silent no longer. You speak of peace and cooperation, but you destroyed our fleets, crippled our defenses, and conquered our worlds through deception and trickery. How is this different from any other form of warfare? Maria turned to face the defeated Altran leader directly. General, how many of your soldiers died in our conflict? Thax paused, clearly struggling with the answer. Our casualties were surprisingly light. Most of our vessels were disabled rather than destroyed. Most of our personnel were captured rather than killed. And how does that compare to your previous conflicts with the Corvan Republic? The general's forearms tensed as he recalled decades of brutal warfare. In our last major engagement with the Corvans, we lost over 40,000 warriors in a single battle. In our entire conflict with your empire, total Altran casualties numbered fewer than 300 beings, most of whom were injured rather than killed, Maria stated. This was not an accident. Every human weapon, every tactical plan, every strategic objective was designed to end the conflict with minimal loss of life. Prime Drone Zexhai spoke for the first time since the proceedings began. The Hive does not understand. If humans possess such devastating capabilities, why show restraint? Why not simply conquer the galaxy as any dominant species would do? Maria smiled, and for the first time since the conflict began, it was a genuinely warm expression rather than the cold smile of a predator. Because conquest is not strength. It's weakness disguised as power. True strength lies in building something better than what existed before. She activated a final holographic display, this one showing the proposed structure of the human protectorate. We offer both of your species a choice. You can maintain your independence and return to your traditional ways of governing your worlds. But if you do, you will do so in isolation from the galactic community. No trade with protectorate worlds. No access to our technology. No participation in our communication networks. The implications were clear. After experiencing human technological superiority, isolation would mean stagnation and eventual decline. Or, Maria continued, you can choose to join the protectorate as full members. Your cultures will be preserved and respected. Your people will retain autonomy over their internal affairs. But you will also accept certain fundamental principles. No aggressive warfare, no conquest of other species, and no oppression of your own populations. Ambassador Quilox from the Telian Confederacy raised a tentative hand. Supreme Commander, what guarantees do we have that humanity will not become the very kind of oppressive empire you claim to oppose? It was David Reed who answered, standing from his position in the human delegation. The same guarantee we've always provided, Ambassador. Our actions over the past 2 centuries. We have had the capability to conquer the galaxy for decades. Instead, we chose to build, to trade, to cooperate, and to prepare for defense rather than conquest. He gestured toward the defeated representatives of the 2 former empires. Even now, after being forced to reveal our true capabilities, we offer partnership rather than subjugation. We seek cooperation rather than domination. Admiral Beth Torres, still commanding the vast human fleet that now maintained order throughout. The former war zones, appeared via holographic projection. All human military forces have been ordered to defensive positions only. We are not occupying conquered territory or demanding tribute from defeated enemies. Our fleets will remain active, only long enough to ensure stability during the transition period. General Thax stood slowly, his massive frame towering over the other delegates. The Altran people have known only the way of the warrior for 1,000 years. You ask us to abandon everything that defines us. No, Maria replied firmly. We ask you to expand your definition of what it means to be a warrior. The greatest warriors are those who fight to protect rather than to conquer. Those who use their strength to build rather than destroy. Those who choose their battles wisely rather than seeking conflict for its own sake. She paused, letting her words sink in. Humanity offers the Altran people the chance to become the galaxy's protectors rather than its predators. Your warrior skills, your courage, your dedication to honor, all of these qualities are needed in the Protectorate. But they will be used to defend the innocent rather than to dominate the weak. Zexhai buzzed in what humans had learned was deep thought. The Hive has always believed that collective consciousness was superior to individual thought. But your actions have shown us the limitations of our approach. Perhaps there is wisdom in learning new ways of thinking. Maria nodded encouragingly. The Corvin gift for coordination and collective problem-solving is invaluable, but it becomes even more powerful when combined with individual creativity and diverse perspectives. The Protectorate needs both approaches working together. The chamber fell silent as the representatives considered the choice before them. Join the human Protectorate and accept a new way of organizing galactic civilization, or maintain independence in isolation from the most successful society in known history. One by one, species began to declare their intentions. The smaller, weaker civilizations that had suffered under Altran and Corvin aggression were eager to join the Protectorate. The neutral species that had tried to avoid the conflicts were curious about human proposals for expanded cooperation. Finally, General Thax stood again. The Altran Empire accepts your terms. We will join this Protectorate and learn these new ways of being warriors. His voice carried a note of something that might have been relief. Perhaps it is time for us to protect rather than destroy. Zexhai's response was more hesitant. The Hive requires time to consider this fundamental change in our existence, but the individuals among us who have experienced independent thought report that it is not the terrifying isolation we feared. If the Protectorate can help us balance collective wisdom with individual creativity, the Corvin people will join as well. Maria smiled again, and this time the warmth reached her eyes. Welcome to the human Protectorate. Not as subjects, but as partners in building something better than any of us could achieve alone. As the session concluded and delegates began filing out to contact their home governments, David Reed approached Maria. Think it will work? He asked quietly. It has to, Maria replied, watching the alien representatives discuss the day's revelations among themselves. We've spent 2 centuries preparing for war while hoping for peace. Now we have the chance to build the kind of civilization that makes war unnecessary. She looked out through the chamber's vast windows at the stars beyond. The galaxy has seen what happens when someone threatens humanity. Now they'll see what happens when they choose to work with us instead. In the months that followed, the transformation was remarkable. Altran warriors became the Protectorate's peacekeeping forces, using their combat skills to protect trade routes and defend smaller species from pirates and raiders. Corvin collectives merged with human innovation networks, creating technological advances that benefited all member species. The galaxy learned that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their hidden military capability. It had been their vision of what galactic civilization could become when the strongest members used their power to lift up the weakest rather than exploit them. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and at its heart stood humanity, the species that had disguised themselves as merchants and farmers while quietly building the foundation for a better universe. They had feared war not because they were weak, but because they understood that true victory meant never having to fight at all.